This brings me to our second trap of path dependency, which would be our neurological shortcuts. This is probably my favorite section, but it's also the one that's the most fun to do in a group exercise or workshop. So I'm going to have a couple little challenges for you to think about from the comfort of your own home. So when I think about neurological shortcutting, my favorite lessons all stem to our habits, our behaviors, and how we improve. I'll give you a couple examples. Think about the first time J.K. Rowling picked up a pen. What about the first time that Oprah Winfrey grabbed a microphone, or that time Serena Williams grabbed a racket? When they did it for the first time, they had to think about it. They had to fumble around and figure things out. And yet, fast forward 10,000 hours or whatever it might have been, and they became experts. It's easy, it's natural. Now, similarly for you, whatever you're best at, especially career-wise, it's become so natural now that you might forget about what it was like that first time you began. And the reason is that our brain structure physically changes with something called myelin. And many of you might already know about myelin, but we're going to look at it in terms of innovation and change. So think about myelin like a series of little highways in your brain that accounts for about 40% of your brain's mass. And here's how it works. Just kidding. Here's how it works. You try something new, like driving a car for the very first time, and the first time you get in the car, you accelerate, you get up to speed, only, just kidding, that's a dog. But a year in, or in that first year, it's kind of difficult, and you really have to think through all of the little steps. But then a year in, year or two in maybe, it's like orange chocolate mocha frappuccino, and you figured out how to drive. In your head, what differentiates us and our brain structure from the animals is that we're really good at making new neural pathways with myelin. You figure something out, and to do that, you need to make a new neural pathway. But once you start to practice something, the repetitive neural impulse starts to look familiar, and so your brain decides to pave it with a little white, fatty tissue highway of myelin. And that highway tells the neural impulse where to go next time. And next time you can do things a little bit better and faster. And as you practice something over and over, once you get your 10,000 hours established, what happens is that myelin pathway ends up so caked up, so fast, that your top pathways can actually be 100 times faster than in areas where you're trying something new. Now, what does that mean for innovation and change? It means once you become good at something, that's how you do it. And the more successful you become in your career, you'll be faster, but now you won't want to do things in a different way. And I like to prove it in a couple ways. The easy way, the starting way, and I know you're doing this from the comfort of your own home, but indulge me on this one thing. Cross your arms as fast as you can. Just give it a try. I know your house, but cross your arms as fast as you can. Now, uncross your arms, shake it off a little bit, and cross your arms, but the opposite way, the exact opposite way. Well, the second time it's a lot more difficult. It shouldn't be, and it's not like it's a terribly insurmountable task, but it's weird, because the second time you have to think about it. You kind of have to calculate where things go, and your brain has to tell your arms what to do. Whereas in the way you've done things 1,000 times, it's a myelinated pathway. You don't actually think about it. And what happens on a grander level when we go beyond crossing your arms is that myelin in your job, in your role, it makes you better, makes you faster, makes things easier, things become smoother, more consistent. But at the same time, myelin makes us stubborn, repetitive, complacent, resistant, and dismissive. And those are all really bad in a time period of chaos and change because, well, our old ways now don't seem to work. Now, I can prove how this limits our career choices in a couple ways, but the fun way I like to do is with a paper clip exercise, and it's actually a business case and a game all in one. So many of you remember Clippy from Windows XP. Hopefully you're not still on XP, but Clippy was legendary. In honor of Clippy, who used to slow your computer down, do a little dance, and come up with advice, I want you to think about what can you do with a paperclip? What can you do? What can you fold with it? How can you use it? And I've done this in 100 or so groups, and I'll encourage you to do it with your family. Give it a shot, and I'll tell you what happens. In almost every group, the ideas that I start to hear would be you could pick a lock, you could use it as a weapon, you could trade it, you could clip paper together, you can use a money clip, you can use a tie clip, you could short circuit something, you could have earrings or a necklace, buy your wife something nicer. But the point would be, I can guess what people would say in almost every room. And if you take this list or screenshot it, give this a shot with your team, with your family, and what you'll find is the average group of adults gets to 10 to 15 ideas, and those ideas are predictable. In fact, almost all of those ideas will be the ones listed on the screen. But if you do this with a kindergarten child, you could get up to 200 ideas. And in some of my other videos, I do this with my niece, Allie, and you can be amazed with what she comes up with. But then when you think about it, kids are more creative. So what's happening? Well, all of us are becoming more intelligent, and in some ways we're more creative, but in our raw creativity, we actually start to experience a limit. And the paperclip exercise and others would generally show we lose about 95% of our raw creative ideas. And what's actually happening is all related to myelin. So in your brain, you could come up with 200 ideas for a paperclip. I believe you if you're really put to task on it. But our myelin speeds us up by narrowing our focus and trying to get us to see the things we've seen or decided or done before. And that narrow thinking is why I could predict which ideas in a given group will come up. But also, it might be helpful for time periods where you need to make a fast decision, but it's terrible for innovation and terrible for change, and it's not terrific for these time periods of chaos. The implication is that you do have other great ideas that are within your grasp, but what you must be careful about as a professional is that your profession, your expertise, is the area where you experience the most narrowing of your field. So how do you retrain your brain? Well, largely it's about workshops, and there's all different workshops you could do. There's dozens of different workshops. If you want a list of them, talk to our team or check out, Create the Future, or look up anything online. What you'll find, though, is that the best workshops will be any workshop where you're forcing yourself to look at your problem from different perspectives, because you're trying to break out of your myelin pathway so that you could see the potential ideas that were actually within your grasp, but maybe not seen because of myelin. A couple little examples. How might you simulate your own disruption? How would other companies approach your market? What if Amazon decided to get in your market? Oh, but they wouldn't. Well, that's what the grocery stores thought. What about Facebook? How would they look at your world differently? Patagonia only believes in saving the world and sustainability. How would they look at what your company is doing? You could also do hackathons. You can role play the future. You can case study other markets and try and bring big implications back. You can imagine your dystopia versus your utopia where things work out, etc., etc. Now, my objective in this particular online lesson is not to walk through how the different workshops might work or to give you any real best practices, unfortunately, in workshops, but it's more simply to give you the takeaway that innovation is not fluffy, it's a science. And when you go through the actual methodologies of just trying to look at your problem from different perspectives, you actually are building new myelin pathways and you're getting your brain retrained to look at your problem from different perspectives. Because everyone wants innovation to happen, but most people don't break from the path. The workshop question for this section would be, how could you retrain your brain to more proactively hunt opportunity? And the tactics would be finding opportunities to bring different teams together, proactively soliciting ideas, funding creative hobbies, tracking trends in other markets, or simply running ongoing workshops with your team. And that wraps up our module. See you in the next lesson.